Welcome back, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. That's right. We're going to talk about some startup news, some startup stories, some startup theory, even. A lot of what we discuss is almost like startup theory, Michael. Maybe it's practice.
Yeah,
Maybe practice is better than theory, although some of it's theory and some of it's practice.
That feels like Zen-like. It's Zen.
I totally just blew your mind there.
It's Friday. I don't even know what you're asking me. But
Santa's got his Santa hat on.
I had to. I felt guilty. I have some elves in the house, and they
right.
came.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's like when we pick these stories, what I found, and we've shared some of this, and if anybody is ever interested, I'm happy to share the list again, or we can find a place to stick it. There's a bunch of folks. Like I follow investment partners, I follow startup news, I follow all sorts of things. And so what I do is I'm kind of trying to pick things that I think is interesting if you're trying to start a security startup or you're trying to secure your startup, right? Those are kind of our two basic themes. Or that I think are just interesting. Like this is good insight for organizations. As I noted at the top, I'm noticing the trend. And if I'm picking up on it, it's probably still pretty early because I'm looking for it. But there's I've had a lot of conversations lately. In fact, we'll talk about some of this stuff here in our news setup today. But let me set it up this way. I've been talking to a lot of organizations looking at security differently in different parts of their enterprises. I've been talking to enterprises admitting they'd like to have a bit more of an agile, nimble, entrepreneurial style spirit. And so, it's when we call these stories, these are things that are being run currently, but we're picking out things that I think are interesting to somebody trying to do this. And I'll tell you where I want to start is the first one. The surprising fact about startup founders, they're older than you think. Now, maybe you've already read it, but if you're at home and you haven't seen this yet, if you follow most stuff today or you've watched Silicon Valley or anything else, right? How old do you have to be to do a startup? I mean,
you got to be in your 20s, according to.
Yeah, right?
Well, because the startup founders that are in their 20s or younger, I think, get more of the press because, oh my God, look, they're so young and they have a $1 billion startup, and that's been in a lot of the movies and TV shows that aren't about startups. But usually, when there's a character that has like gobs of money, they're like a younger person who had a software startup, right? Like that's like the social stigma, I guess.
No, look, and it makes sense, and I think it's existed longer than just that show too. Because if you look at most major areas, they have a 40 under 40 list, they've got a 30 under 30 list. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. We showcase people that are successful at a young age, mostly because it's interesting or it's novel, or we want to get them attention so that we can get more of that. All makes sense. So, did you read the article? Do you know what the average age is?
No. What is the average age?
All right. What do you think it is?
I want to say 37.
39.
39. I was close.
39. In fact, so this is the Kauffman Foundation. And to be fair, if you're unfamiliar with them, they do great work around entrepreneurial stuff. Like their work is good. They're behind a lot, like the Million Cups of Coffee. That's their thing. I have great things to say about them. So here's the rest of their research.
It's pretty funny because guess how old I was?
39?
Yeah. My startup.
Yeah, there you go.
So
their research found there are twice as many, and this was tech, twice as many tech founders over 50 years of age than under 25 years of age. So, here's why I wanted to point that out to people. It's never too late. In fact, these are just numbers. You could be watching this right now in your 50s or 60s. It's not too late. You could be in your 20s. Awesome. Go for it. Swing for it. The point that I was only making on it is when you sit down and look at the numbers, you always have that opportunity. If this is something that you're interested in, hopefully we're helping build your confidence and give you things to think about. And if not, but you'd like us to, send us a note and let us know what we can do to help on that front. But, as we wrap up the year of looking at this, what I thought was interesting is there's a lot of names on here that we know. In fact, I'll give you a couple. Reid Hoffman was 35 when he founded LinkedIn. I think you've probably heard of that. Netflix was launched when Reed Hastings was 37. Red Bull co-founder you can look in the article for his name, was 61. It's a long name. You'd think with Santa Arcangelo I'd be good at it, but I'm not. He was 61.
But Red Bull's in another country. That's not a U.S.-based startup, is it?
Since his name looks like it's Chelio, I'm going to go with yes.
Okay.
You're correct. But like the point to it is, right, and everybody likes to tell the story of Colonel Sanders and all these other people. I wanted to point out that when we look at this isn't necessarily a young kid's game, but it's anybody. If you've got an idea and you're interested, and as we've learned with our guests, you can have a product idea, you can spin off, you can go consulting, there are so many options, and I think that that's exciting. I know sometimes we'll hear about, there's like 2,000 startups, that's horrible. No, that's great. Here's why that's great. We have options. Yeah, look, a lot of them aren't going to work, and some are going to start to filter up. That's great. When podcasting got started, back when I actually used to do more of it, do you remember, did you never went to any of like the pod expos or anything? Did you go to any of those, Paul?
No, I did not.
All right.
Unfortunately.
So one of the guys I had worked with early in my career was the podcasting guy at Yahoo at the time. So I sat down with him and I said, dude, what are we going to do with all these people hopping in? He's like, you don't get it. That's great. I said, okay, you're right. I don't get it. Why is that great? He said, because the quality will rise up, because you've got more voices, because you've got more opportunities. That's going to force innovation. That's going to get things to change. Was his prediction correct or not? I don't know. But what I know is in the startup capacity.
No, I like it.
Go for it.
Yeah, because in a lot of different things, like I won't use podcasting as an example, but in a certain software niche, right? I'm like, wow, like I either have this problem or I see a software startup that's trying to solve a problem, and I'm like, that's great that there's lots of them, because now I either recognize that I have a problem or I recognize that there's people out there solving a problem that I have, and now I get to pick. Exactly. And like you said, the first one I find might not fit my. I don't want to say they're crappy, right? But might not fit my needs, so I'm going to go find one that does. And that just raises everyone up, and it leads to more business for everyone.
Yeah.
And
now, there's a flip side of this too, right? And we talk about this all the time. Yeah, I am a firm believer. In fact, I've had some great conversations recently on the corporate side, looking to do work with startups. And it's interesting because the chief challenge that they've faced, and I've now heard this 3 or 4 times in the last 2 or 3 weeks. These startups don't know their value. They cannot communicate to us what they do. They've got buzzwords. They've got a pitch deck. It's really slick. I have no freaking clue what they do, and I'd love to work with them if I could understand it, but I don't know what it is. And it's interesting. I told you one of the shows I've been really taken to lately is The $1 Billion Buyer. So it's Tillman Fertitta. He's the guy that owns Landry's. And so he goes into these companies and he says, look, tell me about your company. What would a purchase order from me do to help you? And sometimes we're talking about it's a $30,000 purchase order. It's a $60,000 purchase order. But for some of these companies, that's like a 25% increase, a 50% increase. And he asks them a ton of questions and looks at stuff. And he's like, look, I can help you and I can help your company and I'll be a referenceable account for you. But I don't know what you do, or I'm not comfortable with you. I think if you're in business, those are good shows to watch, and it doesn't yet seem to be at that. And we're going to go tell a bunch of sob stories and try to pull in all the crap. So if we come back to it, the things that I keep looking at that I thought were interesting here is you need to be able to communicate. So if you've got an idea, get out there, try it, learn how to communicate, learn how to market, learn how to sell. Right, all those dirty words in the technology world. You know the absolute worst that happens. You go back and get a job, but now you've learned how to sell and you've learned about business and you've been on the other side, and potentially you're more marketable. So I think it's good, and I think that if you've got an idea and you're comfortable with it, I think that you should go for it, and I think that'd be really good. All right, so I've been talking about this and dancing around it. So the headline is, why is Johnson & Johnson getting into startups? Right, household brand, everybody knows it. What I thought was really interesting here was the subtitle was really negative. The subtitle is, when you run out of ideas, you buy someone else's.
Yeah,
that's horrible. That's a crappy idea. And their argument here is, hey, you only do so much and you exist, and so therefore the only way you're going to grow after that is to start to acquire other companies and other types of things. I grabbed this mostly because of the conversations that I've had. Now, Johnson & Johnson was not one of the conversations that I've had. But I've talked to a lot of companies, and they've said stuff like, it's tough to innovate in a large corporate market.
Yeah. Well, and you can only make so much baby powder and Vaseline, I guess. Is Vaseline a Johnson & Johnson brand? I don't know. Petroleum jelly? I don't know if it's their brand or not. Anyway.
Yeah, but to your point, right? And so they've got the things that they do, and you need to grow at some point. But what's interesting too is if you think about it like a federated model, how much money do you want to put at risk versus buying a startup? And what I look at is so, and we've talked about this before. One of your exits as a startup, maybe you get acquired, right? And what did we say in the last couple of weeks? Stop bad-mouthing these companies, folks, because they might be your acquirer. And so the thing here is, if you think about it, go back to this idea of there's thousands and thousands of startups, right? So it's not crowdfunding at that point. You're going to see what settles out. Something starts to rise up. It starts to get traction. You get a chance to look at it. You get a chance to evaluate fit. You get to see where it fits in your portfolio as well as your culture. And you go, I kind of like that. Cool. Then you can step in. You can make an investment into it. You can buy. I don't see that as meaning you've run out of ideas. That to me, almost
it looks like Pepsi did the same. Pepsi did it internally, right?
Yeah.
So we see this externally and internally, which I think is great, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I don't see it as you've run out of ideas. I see it as, wait a minute, you're going and looking at what the startup world is doing, and you're looking at ways to innovate, and you're looking to expand your line and do stuff differently. That's not a lack of ideas. That's actually embracing, we're really good at this core. And by the way, it's making billions of dollars a year, and everybody knows the name brand. So I put it in to say, I think it's good. I think it's a good model. And one of the things I want to start exploring next year is the people that are in enterprise today that like being in enterprise. They don't want to be in a startup. They don't want to be a startup founder. They don't want to go work for a startup, but they love being around it. And they'd like to help our startups get traction. And they want to help people understand what it's like. And they want to pull some of that energy and that vibrance into it. And we're going to keep showcasing the companies that are doing it because I think it makes a big difference. But let's talk about Pepsi. Let's talk about the idea of the Shark Tank, because obviously we talk about this a lot. And what I thought was interesting was Pepsi. Now, granted, Pepsi is a huge company, and so it's easy to do this at scale. But I think you could do something like this in a small company. So here's the setup. PepsiCo North America, their CMO, Seth Kauffman, created a fast pitch to try to attract talent. And so basically what they did back in August was it was an internal challenge. They called it Fast Pitch. And their internal marketers could pitch ideas for critical to the business, and you could win $1 million in marketing activation funding. So what's cool about that is it was those dollars are worth a lot if you're in the marketing part of your company, and that's a substantial number. So what's cool is Pepsi. You understand this better than me, but if I understand like we call it like MDF, right, marketing development funds and marketing activation dollars. So this is the money that we give to partners, or we give through the channel, or we use for specific projects, and it's set aside at the beginning of the year, and then it gets allocated as the year goes out. Did I capture that fairly well, Paul?
That's what it sounds like, yeah, and it sounds like they put aside some funds for an employee to come up with their own marketing idea or program, and then just let them run with it, which just speaks volumes to enabling your employees and making it a great place to work.
Yeah, slightly different, but one of the things that has always captivated me was I read this is years ago, a story where Richard Branson apparently, and maybe from what I can tell, still does this with all of the Virgin brands.
Yeah, you were saying this.
Let's say you've been working there and you've got this idea. He's happy to invest in it, and he says, look, if it works and you're happy and you go produce something of value, of course I'd want to own a piece of it. But you know what? If it doesn't work, we're a multi-billion-dollar company. We can take that hit.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything to us. And you're better for it. You've learned. And you come back to the fold and we're good. So I look at what Pepsi's done and I said, so wait a minute. You've created a competition. You've patterned it off of something that people think is exciting and successful. You've gone to your marketers. You said, go find me something that's critical in the business, and then we're going to do a pitch competition. And by the way, the winner's going to get $1 million of activation funding to go make this happen. $1 million. That is not a small budget in any organization. So they put a significant amount of money on the line. I don't care how big their budgets are overall. That's a big prize point. And I think it actually did really well. I mean, look, they basically said, It got people fired up. It got them excited. I think it's a way to do some of that culture. And, I always look at it and I go, think about, you and I have talked about this on this program a lot, and we've talked to people that have gone and done their TED Talks and other stuff. And my question for anybody who's done a TED Talk that's been received well is, how much time did you put into your 14 or your 18-minute talk? And the average answer, people that have done well, is a couple hundred hours.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if you're going to start letting people in your organization allocate time to think about the business, to then come up with a solution, to then pitch that solution internally, tell me the downside on that. They got better at thinking about the business, explaining it, coming up with solutions, and pitching a solution. Doesn't that make your company better overall?
Absolutely. It's kind of funny. We do a similar thing here at Security Weekly. Everyone and on a very much smaller scale than $1 million, everyone gets a Raspberry Pi. Go do something with it. Whatever it is. And then talk about it. If it works for the business, great. We'll buy more Raspberry Pis. Go do something else. And so you can do it on a smaller scale too. And it doesn't have to be, as grandiose.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've seen for years, like Google had, and I don't know if they still do it, but like they had the Google Fridays where you could spend time on it. Yeah. And we see other people, they'll let you pursue your passion projects and stuff like that. And I think you've raised a good point. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you can do that. And then, but what I liked about this article in specific was they put a significant amount of money behind it and said, here, you run with it. We're going to back you on it.
Logarithm I think that's does that. They came on our show a couple of weeks ago and they do that. I think they give their employees 3 or 4 days to split up into teams and work on a project idea, and a good percentage of them actually become features in the product line somewhere. That's awesome. All they do for 3 or 4 days, and they have a competition. I think that's cool.
I like that a lot. All right, so here's the other article, and Chad started talking about this, and man, his timing on this was great. So the article headline is, many boom time startups are fizzling out, and the subhead is, as the venture capital deals declined from their peak last year, a lot of young companies are left without options. Now, to just kind of foreshadow an article I've got coming up in CSO, it'll be in January, I've had some companies that have started talking about financial health. And in fact, if there's interest, I think this might even be somebody we talk to on the program, because a lot of folks, especially in security, we don't always look at the financial health of organizations. We just go, hey, how do you protect their information? Yeah. And do you understand security controls? And what are we being able to do? And the short argument was, you need to assess the financial health of these companies, because that's going to tell you whether they're cutting corners or not, whether they're able to make the investment on the right controls, whether they're able to capitalize the things that they need to do. Oh, that's kind of interesting. But one of the things we got talking about then was that the credit cycle that we've been on, so for like the last 8 years, but certainly, actually, we've pretty much, without getting deep into the fiscal policy sides of it, interest rates have been historically low, and money supply has been historically high, and that's made the cost of credit almost zero. And so that's created a lot of opportunities for companies to survive, maybe beyond what they could have in any other sort of an economy. And we just saw this week that the Fed raised the rate, and they've signaled that they're going to raise it again in the coming year. And that's not a surprise to anybody. So from a what does this mean for business? I saw a headline today. We'll talk about it in January. But people are bracing for a boom now of cash and IPOs and everything else, which of course they are. But I think the thing that's interesting about this is, people are noticing that there's fewer funding rounds at early stages. And this is one of the things, when Josh and Scott joined in as co-hosts, Josh has had a lot of insight for me on looking at how that works and what seed rounds are. In fact, that's one of the things we'll pull up today to show people in one of our companies. But what's also kind of interesting, too, is that it's not just that there's VCs. It's like Chad was saying, well, are you working with the bank? Are you working with local investors? Are they willing to give you a loan? Are they willing to do a return? As we start to see those interest rates go up, that might not happen as much. We might find that some of these companies aren't as well capitalized, but they were able to get revolving loans. They were able to get they were able to get money cheap. As that starts to come down, I think we're going to see companies are going to need to innovate. And so what I think we're going to pay attention to, and what I'm going to be interested in, is how many of those companies then figure out how to sell better, how to market more effectively, how to differentiate themselves, or pivot faster or do any of those types of things. And so I think it's worth paying attention to. I think it's worth paying attention to if you are a startup and asking yourself those questions. I think it's worth paying attention to if you're evaluating startups, not as a way to dissuade you from working with them. I think it's just it's a way that for the last cycle we've not had to think about a lot. And I think it's time to start thinking about it again. But do you have thoughts on that?
No.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know. I kind of got on a roll there, and
I was just letting you go. You were on a roll. I wasn't touching it.
I mean, those are the things I kind of geek out on. Like I get excited about those things, and I try to figure that out as we go to a certain extent. All right, two more that I pulled up for us to talk about. One of them, the link I threw up is bad. I'm going to have to go get the right link for you. All right, let me switch. What I look for in candidates interviewing at my startup. So here's why I threw this one up. You and I have talked a lot, and I have had people ask us questions about what is it like to hire for your startup? What do I need to be able to do? I know you've gone through that, so I was curious your take on this. But I've also been pretty vocal that I don't think in the security world necessarily we face this talent shortage that everybody thinks about. By the way, the sales industry is convinced they have a shortage. The trucking industry is convinced that they have a shortage. The plumbing industry is convinced that they have a shortage. You see the trend here? Mm-hmm. Everybody's got a shortage. So what I started looking at was, well, how are you hiring? Like, what are you advertising for? What are you hiring? How do you cast it? Right? I mean, like, if you'll allow me to indulge, are you straight talking what you need? And if you're applying for the position, are you cutting to it? And I loved these questions. So I'll just read their highlights. This is what they look for. Have they done their Googling? Now this is, and you know what, I'm gonna break my rule here. I'm gonna read this first line because I couldn't agree with it more. This is just common sense, but I'm amazed at how often this step is skipped. Yep, me too, consistently. I talk to people and they didn't do a basic Google search about anything. If you're interviewing with somebody, if you're taking a briefing, if you've done nothing, you've done no prep at all. You're going for an interview for a job. You don't know what they do. Wait, what? I mean, are you fine? Am I just in a different space, or what? Are you fine?
No, I think they should have a general idea, have at least, like the article says, done a Google search or read a little bit about your website, and they should have engaging questions about what you do and how it works at the organization. But at the very basic level, they should know roughly what you do. Like, for example, when you apply for a job here at Security Weekly, you should at least go watch a video that we did. If you haven't done that, then that I can see that being a negative.
I mean, I'm not saying you go full cyber stalking.
No. I'm not saying you have to fully understand the whole business as much as you can get from all publicly available sources. No, but in our case, right? Did you listen to a podcast or watch a video? That's really all I'm looking for. In the case of a company, did you go read the front page of our website to see what we did, what market space we play in? Do you have even a remote understanding of who you are, right? I mean, it's kind of funny because to me this feels like a basic startup skill, but here's the other part to it too, right? So I said this works for a startup. Frankly, I think if you're running a security team today, congratulations, you're in startup mode. You want to know why? Because even if they call you the CISO, nobody knows what the hell that means, and you've got to go define that market and defend it every freaking day. Mm-hmm. If you're in security today and you're in the enterprise, congratulations, you're in sales. I feel like I'm on a trend here today, right? The good news is you're not really cold calling. No, my bad. You're totally cold calling. You know why? You got to go convince people in the organization who don't know you have a bad idea of what security is, probably also don't like sales, and you've got to sell them that they need to change to do something for their betterment and for yours. Yep, right. You're in sales. So so the second one I loved, to show that they're coachable. It's funny because I've helped some organizations do some hiring over the last year, and that's the number one thing I look for is the person. Look, nobody knows it all, and so are you coachable? Are you open to feedback? Are you willing to look at it? And here's the thing, and I think we don't do this well in security. Being coachable doesn't mean you're incompetent. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I mean, we can pick out, and I think I've even asked you this before, how many people does Tom Brady have around him? Dozens.
Why? Because he wants to continue to perform at the peak. And I think that a lot of times in security and probably in startup land, it's nope, I'm the founder. I have to be able to do it all. Nope, I'm the security person. I must always have an answer. I want people that are coachable. I want people that say, if there's a better way, show it to me. I'll learn. I'll pick it up. I'd like you to pick it up quickly. I'd like you to work on it, but I don't think you have to know everything.
Right.
They bring a startup spirit to the table, of course. But you know what's funny? Again, I say of course. When you're interviewing for a startup, it's fascinating because I found people that are like, oh, I totally love that. Have you ever worked for a startup? No. Do you know what a startup spirit is like? I think so. Right. All I would say is based on some recent experience, if that's the process, find a way to let them get a taste of it and test them out before you go too far. Because some people find out that they don't particularly like it. All right, the next one. They act like they've already got the job. I thought this one was interesting. We'll go with, okay. Like, what's your take on that? Somebody comes in, like, do you expect them, like, is that what you're looking for?
I mean, you're looking for confidence, but, there's, there's lines that need to be drawn with that as well, right? So I would say that the quality you're looking for is confidence, not overconfidence.
Yeah. So how would you define the two? How would you look at that?
Well,
give me an example of somebody who comes in who's confident and feels like they're already part of the team versus somebody who comes in and they're arrogant, like, this is mine, and why are you even talking to anybody else? What's the difference?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's a good differentiator is what you just said, Michael. I think, confident is you have the skills to offer and you feel you can add value and you show that you have the skills and can have value. Overconfident is, like you said, like I don't know why you're considering everyone else. I'm the best person for this job, hands down. And I don't know. I guess that's more. It's a tough thing to quantify, right? It's more of a feeling that you get from the person.
So I'm looking at their examples here, and I'll tell you again, right? So I had a person come in one time, and they said, okay, so I've thought about it a lot, and here's my plan. And I looked at that plan and I went, do you even understand what we do? Now, the funny part was they thought they did. They had talked to some other people in the organization. And so to be fair, it created a huge problem. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of like, okay, what the hell do we do here? And how do we make that work? And it got resolved out. But so like their example here is we want somebody to come in with their plan and how it's going to work and how it's going to go. I think that's interesting. I do like to hear, though, what your language is. I mean, is it we language? Is it inclusive language? Are you part of the team already? Can you see yourself as part of the team? Do you see yourself as an extension, or is it well, let me tell you what you guys need to do? Because at that point, I'm like, wow, do you not get that we're interviewing you for a position here, right? Like, right. So I think there's interesting stuff there. They're true to themselves and to your values. Okay, cool. And they follow up, but they can take a hint. Yeah. I like that, actually. Now, it says here, I've had candidates winning and losing who followed up with cupcakes and cookies. I can see how that would really work for some people. I think other folks are probably more like booze and cigars. I'm going on a limb here.
True, very true.
But here's what they did say, which I like, is what I recommend is sending a short, sincere thank you note immediately following the interview and then listening. Like, and this is tough. This is tough when you're in sales. This is tough when you're in a startup mode. This is tough when you're interviewing.
I think it depends
people never work on the schedule you want. Well, all I was going to say is people never work on the schedule you want. So that whole like, okay, I followed up. Wait, where are they? What's going on? Sometimes, man, things just go sideways. I don't like it. I'm not happy with it, but there is a little bit of value to patience. But what are you thinking?
Well, I have thoughts on that statement too, but what I was thinking is it also depends on the position you're applying for. If you're applying for a software engineering position, I think a thank you note is fine. A follow up to say, hey, I just I made this technical blog post, or hey, my GitHub repo is here, in case you need a quick reference to it or something. That's appropriate. If you're applying for sales or account management, and you're following up with a nice handwritten thank you or some kind of gift, or maybe I've worked with people, their side business is wine, right? And if you're applying for a sales position, you follow up and say, oh, I thought you might like a bottle of my wine. We talked about it in our interview. Here's a gift to you. like that type of thinking and skill is very appropriate and more relevant to the sales position, and that would weigh more heavily with me, right?
You're right.
You know what I
That's a good
mean?
point.
So like it
That's a good
depends on the
point.
position.
No, you're right. It's positional. It's contextual. Okay, that's a good point.
I think that now on your other point, I think people do lose patience with the HR department, and I think that we have some company, I shouldn't say we as an industry, right? But I think some companies go through phases and sometimes struggle with HR, and that isn't necessarily the fault of HR. It could be that they are so understaffed that the people who need to make the decisions on who to hire are just really swamped, and it can delay the process, and people get frustrated. And it could also be a different situation where the HR department really is just terrible. I try not. I advise people not to solely judge the company based on the HR hiring aspect of it, right? I mean, they may have good people in HR, like once you join the company, but try not to judge the entire company and your entire beliefs about the company solely on the hiring practice, because maybe they don't have the right person in there, or like I said, maybe the other people who are making decisions are just busy. So try not to do that. Is always my advice.
No, I think it's good advice. All right, so I fixed the link on the other one. It was 5 business warning signs that signal integrity slippage. Integrity is probably a favorite of mine. I've always felt that integrity is what's really important. It's important for us at an individual level. It's something I prize in myself. It's something I prize in other people, and it's something I prize in companies. It's been a theme of our program as we've talked to people about security. Look, it's a small community. As big as it is, it's a small community. Security is predicated on trust. Integrity is a key component of trust. And so as all those pieces have come together, I thought this was interesting. And so here were the 5 warning signs. It's a switch to survival mode. When customers don't appear as fast as the founder projected, cash runs short, everybody on the team starts to worry about losing their job, suddenly closing the sale no matter what is required takes precedence. Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. What I would temper this with is I want to see how the company handles itself in survival mode. Not that it's in survival mode.
Yeah, I
don't think it's bad to be in survival mode, especially when you're starting out. But that's interesting. All right. Big bad investor. Go ahead.
Well, it was just the one that resonates with me is misunderstood pivots. I think startup or established business, that's a lot of times is the kiss of death. From hiring perspective, from investor perspective, from customer perspective, from just overall integrity, like you said, Michael, perspective, a misunderstood pivot. And I've seen it happen firsthand with companies that I've been close with too. Misunderstood pivot is bad.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm starting to realize too is that there's pivots and then there's adjustments, and there's a huge difference between the two.
Yeah, adjustments are oftentimes a lot more successful than like a full-on pivot. So
I would say I full-on pivoted a year ago, and I am what feels to me sometimes like pivots are really just adjustments, especially when I calibrate them with customers. And I'm like about this, they go, "Oh, that's what I was trying to explain last time. You got it, good job." And I'm like, that feels like it's totally different. Like, no, it's the same thing you were doing. It just makes sense now. That's not a pivot. That's
right.
Oh, I figured out how to explain it, right? But that makes sense. Troubling talk around a water cooler, fine, but the lack of communication from the top. To me, this is a signal. Whether you're a startup, it's a team, it's an organization. I do a lot of work now with executives and boards, and what I find is, if I can get my finger on the pulse of how they communicate and what they communicate, that gives me insights in like the first 30 seconds of where to go in an organization. I don't form snap judgments, but it lets me get a better sense of where we need to focus to better understand what's going on in the organization. And, obviously there's a bias because of the way that I focus on communication, but I got to tell you, the more open you are, the more transparent. Like I think if I haven't done the rant on this crap about over communicate, look, I'll give everybody the quick version of it. About 10 years ago, it was if you're a good leader, you effectively communicate. Most people couldn't answer that. I can answer that, and you know what? I'll put the link up in the show notes. It's on my website, absolutely free. It's like a 6-minute video on what effective communication actually is. It's a whole model. It took a couple years to build out. It's there. It's yours. And it was driven by that because nobody could answer that question. Well, you know what most of the world did when they couldn't answer the question of what effective communication was? They stopped saying it. So what you see a lot of folks now will say is, good leaders over-communicate. And all I can think of is that scene in Tommy Boy where he's like, I can put a crap in a box, put a sign on it. All you got is a guaranteed box of crap. If you're over-communicating crap and friction, you just everything else in the organization. But what they're trying to say when they do this is, are you open to your people? Are you trying to communicate with them? Are you keeping those lines open? Are you letting them know what's up? So while I think that they're maybe not choosing the best way to explain it, what they're saying is the communication there. And when you start looking at how it's actually flowing in an organization, I think you can learn a lot about their integrity.
Absolutely.
Those are the things I had. Tell me how your startup journey is going as we wrap up the year. Like, look back on your year. What do you think?
It's been an interesting journey this year. We're full steam ahead in 2017 with lots of efforts, and you'll just have to kind of wait and see to see what we have in store. So
that's good, man. I'm looking forward to it. I would say for me, if you had asked me a year ago, would this year have gone the way I expected? Nope. And I'm in such a better place for it, and I'm so excited. I have to tell you, I personally feel like I have found my calling. I've got a passion. I've got something I believe in. I'm excited about it, and those refinements, it's kind of like, to your point, I had some conversations this week. So let me be really clear. Those of you, like when I say, hey, if you want to connect on LinkedIn or Twitter or shoot me a note, I call back. We talk, and I've had some absolutely brilliant conversations in the last couple of weeks that have really helped me better understand where things make sense, what's been confusing, where people need help, where to focus. And I feel like I'm ending the year strong and excited and confident. And all I can tell you right now is I've got some pretty exciting stuff planned for like the next 120 days. And I now know enough to know it's not going to go according to plan.
Right.
And anything I think is not going to make sense, but I've gotten so much simpler with it, and I'm so excited. I have not felt this excited and confident about something, and oh man, it's a really long time. So, the journey's been great, and I have to say, our guests have been part of it, and those of you listening and writing in have been part of it because you're giving us insights and you're helping us shape it, and it's validating choices. At least for me, Paul, I'm finding at times I'm validating ideas, or I'm thinking about something differently, and it's been a real treat, and so I'm grateful for that, and I hope that we've been able to do the same thing for other people.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting too. We've got some sponsors coming up for next year on this show. That are sponsors of our other programs as well. And it's going to be really fun to talk with them about the startup aspect of what they're doing.
Yeah,
and
I can't wait.
I haven't had that conversation with IT Pro, who's going to be a sponsor. Black Hills Information Security is going to be a sponsor. So we're going to drag John on the program. I think is the best person, right? To talk
That's
about,
be awesome.
because John and I are doing the startup together, right? But then John can also talk about his startup journey for Black Hills Information Security, which will be interesting. And then Tenable Network Security is a sponsor of all our programs in 2017 as well.
It's going to be a blast.
And so, that journey is amazing. Ron is no longer Ron's no longer the CEO, and Ron and I are still in touch. In fact, I was just exchanging email with him today. I'm going to invite Ron on the show to come on next year as well, which would be interesting to talk about his startup journeys, right? And some of the work he's doing today. That's going to be something to look forward to for sure for Michael and myself and all of our listeners and viewers. And then the current folks at Tenable and what they're doing, they just got a new CEO that was announced 2 days ago. So that's going to be.
I was just going to say, I just saw that headline flash today. In fact, I want to say, I think it was our friends Owler who did that, and I just realized we skipped over the stories. Let me just touch on them quick because we were in that pretty good. Here's what you're going to see next year. Here's what I put up. One I thought was interesting. It was a security company, but it came out of Y Combinator. That to me is fascinating for a lot of levels. They took a $500,000 seed round in November 2013. 3 years later, they took a $2.3 million round. That's interesting to me for a long time. Their seed money lasted them a long time. It was not as big as we see. And then the other piece was a $1.5 million seed round that just came out this week. So those were things that. So like again, when we talk about seed rounds, I mean, it used to be there a couple $100,000. Now they're into the millions, and your A rounds are getting bigger and bigger too. So it's interesting. I think it's all interesting.
Awesome.
There's so much that we're going to explore next year, and that's where too. Here's what I'd love to know. What do you want to know about these companies? Like I'm going to look at the things that come up. And Paul, you're going to look at them too. And so there's certain things that we think are interesting in the trends that we're going to throw on there, largely because of what Aller alerts us to and other things that we see. But help us understand what you'd like us to help you understand. It could be we run a special or we do a webinar or two. We create some resources for it. But the other thing, too, is we're going to start bringing some investors on the program, and they're going to talk with us about what they look for and what the process is like. And we're going to work to demystify what that's like overall, and specifically looking at security startups and things to think about there. We're going to look at traction. So if there's something that you're interested in or that you want to make sure that we showcase in these companies of note, or you have a company of note, somebody that you've worked with, look, that's how we've gotten some of our interviews. So let us know. And I think you're going to find that we're nice. And
we're on the nice list. To end on a holiday note, we think we're on the nice list. We'll see. December 25th will be the deciding factor, the date that we'll find out whether we've been naughty or nice. So thanks, everyone, for listening and watching to this edition of Startup Security Weekly. We'll see everyone in 2017. Thanks for watching.